It is too early to conclude if the recently concluded landmark summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in may eventually lead to something as big as the fall of the Berlin Wall. But the recent bonhomie shown by the two Korean leaders has lessons for South Asia. Nobel laureate and former president of South Korea, Kim Dae-jung, 1998 to 2003, who is referred to as the Nelson Mandela of the Korean Peninsula, had taken a leaf out of former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee's overtures to his neighbors, by starting the policy of engagement with North Korea called as Sunshine Policy. For this, he was criticized by the Americans, who described the policy as a cover-up for atrocities being committed in North Korea. Attacks continued on him, with WikiLeaks disclosing that the Seoul-based U.S. embassy have even dubbed him South Korea's first left-wing president. As for the military option, the U.S. has a military base in South Korea and in the Pacific Ocean that works as a deterrent to both North Korea and China. Korea is divided into Communist North and Capitalist South. The Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, is not only the border between the two countries, where tension and peace have coexisted, but also a buffer between the confronting ideologies. So far, South Korea has barred many nationals from visiting the DMZ, which includes West Asia, North Africa, Afghanistan and latest being Pakistan, and almost all of those having anti-US credentials. But that is at the political level. Despite the tension between the countries, Koreans have kept efforts of reconciliation alive across the barbed wires. The Kaesong Industrial Township along the border is one such example and has been touted as an apt model for India and Pakistan to begin a cooperative relationship across Lok in Jammu and Kashmir. Set up in 2002 as a collaborative economic development, the industrial park is located 10 kilometers inside North Korea, housing 116 South Korean companies while employing 42,000 North Korean low-wage employees. Public sentiments between the two parts of Korea is such that South Koreans often go sentimental while referring to their countrymen across the militarized border. Despite sanctions being put on North Korea following the sinking of the South Korean Navy ship in 2010, and more lately for their nuclear and missile testings, Seoul refrained from closing or scaling down cooperation at Kaesong, even though it stopped assistance on many other fronts. While traveling in the region a few years back, Korean analyst Kim So-ehan told this writer that a political push was necessary to end tensions, citing the case of Northern Ireland, where economic cooperation began after a political accord between Britain and Republic of Ireland. He believed that economic cooperation devoid of political content would not last long. It may be surprising to note, but Korean sentiments are similar to those to people from the subcontinent. As Indians remember the 1857 mutiny in Kashmiris mark July 13, 1931, Koreans too assemble in the city of Gwangju, South Korea to commemorate the day of the Korean Uprising. The uprising led to the democratization of South Korea and had a cascading effect on the demise of communist and autocratic regimes in East Europe and the Philippines. Currently it is touted as the biggest annual event of social moment activists, outside the World Social Forum. The May 18 Foundation or the Gwangju Forum has so far awarded the prestigious $50,000 Gwangju Prize for Human Rights to two Indians, Iram Sharmila of Manipur, for her 16-year-long hunger strike against the draconian Armed Forces Special Powers Act, AFSPA, and Lenin Raghuvanshi of Uttar Pradesh, UP, for fighting child and bonded labor and untouchability. The 1980 civilian protests were a crucial example of how people power could end authoritarian rule in Asia, helping to inspire a major revolution, says Kim Dong-kim, executive editor of the local jong-un daily. Coming back to the summit, peace in the peninsula will have a salutary effect on Indian interests. The summit has the potential to reverse geostrategic machinations in the strategic Indo-Pacific and South China Sea as well, which is good news for India. It will also reduce tensions which had escalated in the region, causing the US to increase its military presence there. The US presence had invited a Cold War-like response from China, who threatened to block the passage of ships in the South China Sea, thus affecting navigational freedom. For India, peace in the region is of considerable significance. In 1991, about 15.6% of the country's GDP, as external merchandise trade, went to the west through the Suez Canal. But by 2014, half of the 49.3% of GDP, as external merchandise trade, was shipped through the South China Sea to the east. So unlike earlier, The South China Sea now has become more important for India economically, and thus it has more investment in peace in the region. The commitment of the two Korean leaders to work to remove all nuclear weapons within this year, pursue talks with the US to declare an official end to the Korean War, is a welcome step that will have a direct bearing on China's behavior as well. Now whether Moon will be able to achieve what his country's towering leader Kim Dae-jung failed to do a decade ago is the million-dollar question. But whether he succeeds or not, the importance of keeping contact alive during tensions and talk of peace and reconciliation definitely has lessons for not just other South Asian leaders but for the world as well. The writer is editor, Strategic Affairs, DNA. Views are personal.